The MaddK Studio Show. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the MaddK Studio podcast. And I'm here, Ken Madden, with Christian Reich, my partner in crime. And today we bring on Matt Lostaglia. And he has this company called Real Resilience. And Matt, you do some pretty cool stuff. I know Matt from the Nomad Network, of course. And we do a Sunday kind of get together, kind of keeping each other on track for our businesses and what we're doing. And I thought this would be a great opportunity because a lot of what he does is something that's so needed and so overlooked in most workplaces, where it's just that interpersonal communication, how to work in teams. You know, you had a video last week that was fantastic, that was on how to compliment people. How do you give a compliment? You know, and one of your really cool clips that you had in there was just that pat on the back. Hey, good job, buddy. You know, like you're 7 years old and you picked up your dog's poop or something. But anyway, so welcome to the show, and tell us, you know, a little bit about the company, what you're doing, and what's going on.
Sure. This is thank you first for having me. This is really cool. You caught me at a really interesting time business wise. So, and also a really interesting time of the day because like normally I'm going to bed in half an hour. So don't mind me, if things seem a little bit off, but East Coast time, right? But it's so right now I just did a really big shift from working with organizations going out on the road doing speaking. I just went on a speaking tour through the Midwest last month where I went to like a grain elevator and processing symposium, which had like thousands of people there. I didn't
Yeah.
know grain could be that interesting, but it was actually 3,333 people who attended.
Wow.
Just
Wow.
like easy to remember, right? But so that was really fun. I didn't really know how kind of more soft skills like this and leadership perspectives. I wasn't sure exactly how those were going to be picked up in an organization like that. Those are real salt of the earth dudes. I don't know if we curse here or not. I'm gonna
Sure.
refrain.
Go
Okay,
ahead.
okay. They're real salt of the earth motherfuckers, right? Like
Yeah.
they don't play games. They want brass tacks. And so I just figured, I'm going up simultaneous with four other folks, and I'm assuming that no one's going to show up to mine. They're going to be going like, here's the new grain feed, and this is the faster elevator that's got better traction. Like
Yeah.
I don't know what's going on. The room was packed, wasn't an empty seat in the house, and I did my 60-minute spiel all about connected leadership. Right, that's the whole premise. That is the guiding light of what I do and what I facilitate. I won't say that I teach. I just every That's the thing. With everything I do, there's nothing that I talk about that is like, I've never heard of this before. It's packaging it and turning it into a system that you can actually use and that complements each other and that is tactical and tangible. Like it actually makes a difference and you can start doing it immediately. It's not esoteric, it's not
Oh, sure.
abstract. You can jump right in.
To back up a sec, so when you talk about like managerial connectivity, I think about does the right hand know what the left hand's doing? Is it that kind of thing? Is it that down to that base level? Or you know, our company is very small, and we find even sometimes with just a few people in the office, things slip through the cracks because of just the interpersonal communications of things, and something gets missed, and it's just is it processes to help improve that kind of thing?
So I think so, not directly, just to be completely transparent and
Sure.
straightforward. It's not a direct component that gets addressed. I have no doubt that through implementing the six principles of connected leadership, as you start to adopt those within your managerial hierarchy, depending on the size of your organization, it might just be like leadership and then workers, but
Mhm.
there's others, you have the mid tiers and all of that.
Right.
This is really the goal, the output here is to create a stronger and more robust culture within the organization.
Okay.
It's to create something like an event, a not an event, but an organizational feel like that culture that people are actually excited to go to, that are proud to go to, that
Sure.
feel, and I am a firm believer that the only way that you get there, especially with jobs that are not do not have intrinsically meaningful positions,
Right, right.
like in order to do that, you have to find connection. And so you have to be connected to either the purpose of the organization and to the actual people inside of that organization. So
That
this
bring
is to connect like the managerial class with the lower tier managers, with the first line supervisors, with the employees, right? It's like it's compressing that stack.
that sounds good because I think about we've all had good jobs, we've all had crappy jobs, and one of the best jobs I ever had was one of the lowest paid jobs I ever had. I worked at a really small 2 aisle food market and butcher shop in Westwood, Massachusetts, in high school. It's called High Street Market. Been there for 100 years, that kind of place. And everybody there was there to do their best, and it was just a small, mom and pop shop, incredible butcher stuff. We'd have like guest people would come in once in a while. We had a guy come in to teach us. I wish I could still do it. He taught us how to bone a chicken without cutting it up. So he would debone a whole chicken without cutting the breasts off or the wings or anything. He deboned the whole. It was insane. And I did 2 of them. I was like, wow, this is cool. At
Was
17
his
years
name
old.
David Blaine? Like, I
Yeah.
don't understand.
It sounds like magic to me.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
it was absolutely. I'm just like, there's no way. There's no way. But he did it. But anyway, that was one of the greatest jobs. And then I think about some of the other places I worked at. It was a chain in the Midwest called Frank's Nursery and Crafts. Basically, it was just like a Michael's for your yard. And I drove a forklift there for $4.60 an hour in 1992. And the culture at this place was the most toxic, horrible thing I could ever imagine. I mean, I couldn't get out of there fast enough, and it was just like, it wasn't because of the pay. It was just because it was kind of fun. I got to drive a forklift and empty trucks, and
Yeah.
you move shrubs around, and I was young, so you're lifting bags of fertilizer and slinging it around. So you're in good shape, and it could have been a really cool place, but yeah, exactly. And looking at corporate culture, I think right now that's why more people are leaving than any other reason, because people are being paid well now. People are being offered the world now from other places. So, we've had people have offers that have left our company because the offers were so incredibly good. We told them, we're like, we can't even get near matching that, dude. We don't want to see you go. And you always have a place here if it doesn't work out. But man, you got to take this opportunity. And we've had other people be like, you know what? I really like working here. I don't want to go do this other thing. And that's what we really want to hear.
Yeah.
And building that, what you described, I've never served. I'm not military at all, but Christian and you both have. This has a very military feel to it, brought to a civilian capability of being able to, military, there's no choice from what I understand. It's like, no, you're just going to do this and you're all going to get along, and tough. Where, but I think a lot of the structure in the hierarchy of the thing that you're talking about makes a difference. Because from what I've talked about, we've talked with Christian, some other military friends of mine, and Mike Sampaio is another one, and he has some of his the majors and captains and lieutenants and whatever that were above him that he really respected because of just what you're talking about. It was that kind of guy that helped them along, kicked them when they were down, when they needed it, to pick themselves back up. But so is there a military aspect to it? I mean, Christian, do you see any kind of, where do you feel, how do you feel about the military's structure versus civilian, and what's the good and bad?
Well, in my experience, the thing that was great about the military was that there was always the potential for somebody to walk up to you and tell you you're being an idiot. And they could just be direct about it. They may use a measure of colorful adjectives, I think Spock said in the one movie, but they would just tell you you're being an idiot. And then your correct response was, oh, to stop and think, oh yeah, I am being an idiot. I should get my act together, square myself away. And then everybody benefits from that.
Mm-hmm.
And if you didn't, Then it became a game to see who could give who more grief before somebody gave in and changed their course. In all seriousness, though, the people I worked with for whom I had the most respect, just one little side note, I was OIF 09-10. And just in case anybody doesn't have any clue what I'm talking about, that's Operation Iraqi Freedom.
Yeah.
I was there 09 and 10.
Now I know something new.
Government, it was my first federal government sponsored vacation, fully, what was it? All expenses paid vacation. I got other stories I could tell, but I'm not going to bore you with all that now. When I was there, I was an E4. I was given, and I worked as a medic with orthopedics as a specialty. I was there to serve detainees and medical treatments and all that. They gave me the E4. The two doctors, the two surgeons we had, they gave them to me and said, "Hey, Reek, take care of these guys. When they need to go somewhere, here's keys. Go take them around." I was an E4. They gave me a rifle. I had 10 rounds, and I'm supposed to drive these two surgeons around, and they're surgeons for the entire 50,000 person base. And I'm supposed to take care of them, make sure nothing bad happens to them. So the three of us got along really well. But the reason I respected them was because it wasn't, "Hey, I'm an officer and you're a dumbass." It was, we're just three guys. We're all going to go out there. We're going to take care of each other. And we're going to make sure that when we're done, everything's done as well as it can be. Everybody chipped in. Everybody worked hard. It was great. And I've also dealt with some people who are just absolute jackasses. But that was both in the Army and in civilian life too. Mm-hmm. So there's plenty of jackasses in both.
Yeah, it's one of the things that there can be a misconception of with people in the service is that they're like, because even just the word that I just used, like, it's service, right? And so and it's not just public service, right? It's military service. So there is an added component of danger and risk that you're putting yourself into for the benefit of the country. And so thankfully, we live in a time where that is looked upon with great favor. You know, I remember talking with my dad about him getting off the plane, coming back from Vietnam and having red paint thrown on him, you know, and all of that. And so being able to live in this world where that is the case is makes a big difference when it comes to you know, that type of role and perception. But what a lot of people get mixed up on is that they forget that we're just people. And oftentimes we're people that have done some stuff that has shut off other opportunities in our lives and have left us with serving in the military. And so there's just, just to your point, exactly, Christian, is that all flavors, all different varieties are in the military. All, like, you have amazing people that understand how to connect and are there and see it as a brother and sisterhood of arms, and others who are just kind of in it for themselves or just trying to get through the day and just don't really care about who they step on or how the mission gets done. And I think one of the things that I try to promote through this is that, you know, this is a long play. This is the long play. You know, like, you can, whether it be in the military or whether it be in the private or civilian sector, you know, you think about sales, right? Like, you can crack the whip, you can go with, you know, the reward or coercive sources of power and use those to motivate your people. But the question is, what's the time frame? Like, it's effective. Look, I did this. I cracked the whip. You know, we made them stay late. We did all these calls. We got our sales in. We hit our numbers. Like, all right, cool. What's the model for the next 3 to 5 years? You know, are we doing that every single quarter, every single year? Like, is that sustainable? What's our attrition rate for talent? What actions are we taking, and how are we treating our people in such a way that when they do leave, that there's still a marketing campaign for us when they go out? That's
sure.
I don't try to tell people that, like, if you follow the principles of connected leadership, your people will never quit. People are always going to quit. The one thing it does is it it stops that feeling that you had, Ken, when you're there and you're like, I love this work. You know, I could forklift and throw these bags around all day, but I want to get out of here because the people suck. So you get rid of that.
Yeah.
Right. So those people stick around longer, but you're still, that wasn't the lifelong thing. You're still going to leave.
Mhm.
And so, but what happens, the difference is that you're more open to communicate that with your leadership when that time comes up, with the managers, with the owner. You're like, oh, I've always wanted to build motorcycles, or I've always wanted to do whatever. I wanted to dance on Broadway. And then, like, imagine having a spokesperson for you who is a Broadway singer. You know what I mean? Like, they're like, oh man, I worked at this auto parts shop and they were incredible. And they're still talking about it because of how incredible the leadership was. Like, you're creating the most powerful marketing campaigns for yourself to attract talent by taking the steps to retain talent, by actually giving a shit, by actually caring.
Yeah.
I know.
What?
It's crazy talk.
Oh my God.
Like
I
I
had
said-
some shitty jobs where if people would just have acted like reasonable people a little bit, it would have been so much better.
Yeah.
You know that
absolutely.
the irony of ironies is that, so a lot of people have horror stories about the military when it comes to the type of leadership that they had and how they were treated terribly. I'm like the polar opposite. I mean, don't get me wrong. There were some special cases along the way. There always are. But everywhere I went, there were leaders that truly gave a shit. That, like, they really cared about you as a person and your development, and making sure that, you know, that everything was taken care of. If you needed to go home, take care of your family, you go take care of your family. You know, I had a leader that I didn't even like on a personal level, who stepped in and stopped me from, you know, blowing up my own career. So that was really cool. And
Yeah.
but
That says something about character, even if
right.
you don't always get along. There are times when good character does step forward.
Exactly right.
Well, good character will always step forward. That's what good character does. So yeah, I've had I instructors and people I had in college. Some of the professors I had in college, I went to art school, and you know, some of them you could just tell were just there for the paycheck, and the other ones there really gave a crap about you and pushed you in ways that you didn't know. I mean, they pushed you. You were never good enough. You were always had to improve your story about whatever you created, you know, because we were all partiers and stuff. So you've had those, you're going to have that day where you walk in with the painting or drawing that you're supposed to have done that you did, in, you know, in the bathroom on the way into to the thing, you know. And so you make up some BS story about, you know, because it's art school, right? It's what you guys think of art school would be. That's what art school is. A bunch of people standing around, and you're like, oh, well, here, I was just feeling this day, and that because of the butterfly flew by, and that I made this line like that. And we had this teacher who just look at you and go, bullshit, you just can't draw.
Ow.
And, you know, and they're like, you need to go back to the remedial drawing class and learn what you're doing, because the ones that you were really proud of still weren't very good, you know. And hearing that, it was really cool, because you know, I came into school pretty hot. I could draw. I was kind of a hot shit. But life drawing and like drawing people and animals and stuff, I might as well have been in third grade, left-handed with a crayon that's down to the paper. And so I had to take these, well, I didn't have to, but I took these life drawing classes to really struggle through it, because I'm like, all right. And they were life drawing classes. You had a naked person sit in front of you, and they were never like they depict in the movies. One time it was like a 75-year-old guy with a guitar, you know,
oh my God,
singing. It was awful, but you have to sit there for 4.5 hours and draw it. And
punished? Did you park in the wrong spot?
Yeah, it was bad. And then you had the women come in too, and but it forced you to be like, okay, you have to sit there. First of all, think about awkward it is.
Was it hot or cold in the room?
Kind of cold, a little bit cold. So there was shrinkage and rising at different, and depending on the gender. But you had you're standing or sitting 10 feet away from a naked person. Then your whole job is to stare at them and then see what you're doing. It breaks every kind of law of decorum that you have in your head, completely. And because of that, it really changes the way you look at things, just in general, because all of a sudden you realize I have to look past what I'm looking at and figure out what the shape is, what this color is, what this, what this form is doing. And then the form moves because, people don't just sit there for 4 hours. And so there was sometimes we do that, and there was other props in the room. So I'd have this drawing of this horrible person, and there was like a vase and some other stuff around it, and that stuff was all drawn like photorealist. And then there's this cartoon blob in the middle that I tried to draw because I just couldn't get past in my head, and this has a point. A company is the same way. A lot of times they just can't get past what's so obvious they're not looking at as a group. And this is like the group think in my head was looking at that vase, and I understood exactly. Oh, it's shiny on this side, there's light coming in. So I never looked at the body like that. I was looking at body as a person that talks and lives and has a soul, and not just, no, this is an object and I'm looking at that. The job here is to look at these objects in front of me and draw them. And when I did that, then I started to be able to get out of that and pull out of that. But other people in the class would come at me because they're like, oh yeah, all you want to be is like this realist and draw cars. Anyone can do that. And I'm like, you can't, and there was this toxicness in there, but because of the instructor that was leading it was so good, he could turn that on itself. And so he would say, he's like, he would say things like, all right, Ken, you're not doing anything but hands today. Just draw hands. That's a nightmare for me. You might as well just put sticks in my eyes with lacquer thinner. And but he told the other person, okay, today you're just going to draw mechanical things. He had wrenches and put a bunch of wrenches and stuff, and that person just struggled. And then he says, now switch. So now I had to draw the wrenches and I knocked out of the park. This other person had to draw the hands and did really good job. And we're like, oh yeah, look at this. Now it makes sense. And then we were helping each other after that, every class. So it was, so for you, how do you teach this? So if people come to you, how do they find you? How do you reach out? What do you do that, okay, I need to talk to Matt because my company need XYZ. What's the business, I guess, the business aspect of what you do? Oh, go ahead, Christian.
Before Matt explains all of that, because that's really what we all want to hear. But before that, I think a good preface to that, Matt, what are those 6 things you mentioned before? 6? Yeah. There's like 6 donuts. They're
yeah. So
it's a half a baker's dozen minus a half.
Oh, see what he did?
See what you did there. Dad jokes. I'll be here all week.
So, okay. So the principles, the first one, and each of these has kind of depths and layers to it. And actually, this is a great opportunity to talk about why this was an interesting time and a particularly good time for us to do this show.
Cool.
Is because I've decided to create the largest and most robust, completely free to all of the public resource when it comes to connected leadership and this leadership approach. I'm going to start doing.
I get some bosses. I need some old former bosses. You need to send this to. I'm gonna.
So the way I'm doing it is I'm transforming the next approximately, if I've done my math right, the next approximately 6 months to this project. And every week I'm going to release a part of this as the podcast, essentially. So it's going to be almost like an online training course that's going to be released week by week, going through each of these principles. So each principle I'm giving about 4 episodes deep into each one of these. So the first one is effective communication, right? And so it's like so obvious, and exactly like you were saying, it's like the thing that, like, we all know that we need to do it. And there's a sense with each one of these that it's, if you think about it as a leader and you understand that it's a priority, it tends to turn into, we'll do that later. Like, I just need to finish this marketing campaign. We just need to finish this product push. And as soon as we get done with this, I know that there's not going to be some other crazy thing that's going to come up. Then we're really going to focus on taking care of our people. I'm really going to focus on hammering down this communication and all the rest of these. But so in effective communication, we talk about, I've created kind of like the 4 cornerstones of communication. And so we dive into each one of these cornerstones. And then we also make sure to cover the the barriers to communication, right? So those things that come up both externally, internally inside of you, and even the words and the kind of semantic noise that can come up between us while we're communicating. So we cover all that in effective communication. The next one's character strengths. So this was when I actually learned. So while I was in the Army, I don't know if this was around when you were in, but they came out with the Master Resilience Training Program. And I learned about this by studying with the VIA. It's used to stand for something, but now it doesn't anymore. Now it's just VIA.
Interesting.
So, but VA character strengths, VA strengths, something like that .org. It's out there. You can Google it. But so again, I didn't come up with this stuff. I understand how to use it. It's a tool that I understand. Like I learned how to use a drill. I learned how to use character strengths. And so I'm going to show using myself the results of this character strength survey. And these are my results. And then how you can use that survey for yourself and how to leverage your own character strengths in the workplace, but also how you can start to understand the character strengths and leverage those of people in your team. Because a lot of businesses now are looking at this, reducing the hierarchy, the levels of hierarchy, and going more horizontal, right? And so we're assembling teams to do different things at different times, especially early on. It's like everyone's wearing 7 hats.
We're doing that right now. Exactly. And that's really important, is how to, it's a beautiful thing to do the strength thing we did. There's a book called Who Moved My Cheese that I was forced to read. And I say forced to read because I was forced to read it when I worked at my last company, and it was life-changing. It was such a great book. It's just called Who Moved My Cheese. It's just a short little book. Everyone should read it that has anything to do with it, because it kind of talks about what you're talking about, of just people not moving when they need to move, and not understanding what the other people are doing, not being able to communicate with them effectively on their strengths. So, there's 3 of us that design products at my company, and I'm the crazy artist, like anything goes. That there's not a bad idea in my head ever. And then we've got a guy that's like he finds faults in every single little thing that's ever mentioned. And then there's a guy that's right between us. The 3 of us work together so incredibly well and come up with the coolest stuff because of that, and we're brutal to each other, but it's never, we know our strengths, because, each of us will go to one of the other ones if we're something that we're weak on, say, I could really use your help with this because you're the guy. And it happens constantly. And we've tried to, throughout the company, spread that same kind of thing. It's been hard because we're so brutal to each other. It's 3 guys. You're going to be brutal to each other, your friends and stuff like that. If the 3 of us sat in a room and had a couple of beers, by the end of the room, we'd be giving each other crap and we'd all be laughing our asses off about it. Well, you can't do that with everyone in an office, because some people just get butthurt when you do that. And so that communication with people and knowing their strengths and working towards their strengths instead of against them is super critical. So anyway, that's number 2.
I think it also ties into what you were talking about with what happened with you in art class when you were switched roles. You were forced to see each other's strengths by exposing your own weaknesses. And it happened to work out quite perfectly in that situation. I've seen this done effectively when it comes to debates. And even there are some really famous instances that were in, well, there's the South African case, but that was more, that's a different thing. Anyway, so there are cases where you can bring together like different political parties or different political debaters. If things are starting to get heated up, or even if you are trying to make a decision in a meeting, in a conference call, that is, you're trying to finally say that this is the course of action we're going to take, but you want to get more people on board, and you have 2 kind of sides. That strategy that was taken in art class is the same thing that you can do there. And it's essentially what you do is, instead of switching, the roles of who's drawing which, you switch the roles of who's arguing what. Like, have the other side steel man, like give the best, most robust argument that they can for the opposing side without sarcasm, right? Like purely genuine, and then have the other side do that. And in so doing, you are not going to change your mind. You'd be like, they had a really good point, but it's going to humanize that argument, that perspective. And you're like, there is some reason there. There's something, now that I've said that there's some magic that happens. It's probably less magic and more just, chemical releases in our brains that are going off in a certain way. When we say the words out loud in a way that sounds convincing, like we're trying to convince somebody, it's a little bit convincing to ourselves. So
yeah, no, that's great.
Kind of a cool person hack. But so the next one is it's kind of branching and stems in between all of the rest of these, but there are specific strategies to build trust and belonging in the workplace. Right. So learning how to communicate effectively in the workplace and doing that in a structured way that builds relationships helps to build trust and belonging. Utilizing, understanding, and leveraging people's character strengths, putting them in positions to be able to do this, it's trust and belonging, right? And so, but then so in that area, when I specifically go into trust and belonging, I look at short-term and long-term goals, right? There are some things, and the military is actually a beautiful example of this, is that we build, there's a scale, right? So there's this correlation between level of suck, the level of crap that you go through,
yep,
and the time that it takes you to develop trust and rapport with other people in your organization, right? So the person that I went through basic training with and actually was on the same squad with and actually went through all of these drills and went through these sucks and went out into the field and we all got chiggers, you know what I mean? Like we went through silliness together, and then we went to advanced individual training together, and we went to the suck in El Paso, Texas. We were learning how to shoot missiles, and we did all of this stuff, and we got into trouble. Like the more that you're around that person, but the higher the level of suck that you endure together, it brings you together. And there's a very specific reason for that. And it's because you're seeing how this person performs under pressure time and time and time again, right? It's just like the idea of a seatbelt. There's a reason that we trust a seatbelt, because when we slam on the brakes, it stops. It yanks us tight.
Yeah.
That if my seatbelt one time, if I'm going down the street and I slam on my brakes and it doesn't catch me, I'm going to have problems with the seatbelt in that car for the rest of the time that I have that car. Right. So it doesn't take that long to break that trust, but it's that consistency, the consistent performance over time. And the more consistent that performance is against a stronger level of suffering, the stronger and more fast that trust is going to be built, that's why you can be friends with somebody for like 20, 30, 40 years. You've never really seen them go through anything crazy in their life, any really hard trauma. And then, maybe their father passes away and they completely crumble. You're like, I had no idea that that's the way that you were going to react, because we never dealt with that together,
Absolutely.
So there are ways that you can do this in the workplace without putting somebody through basic training. So it's
I've had coworkers though that I wish I could have put through basic training.
Yeah. No, and the thing is, like, to do it, you have to implement suck. Like their suffering has to be there.
Yeah,
that's otherwise it doesn't work. You really have a hard time building up meaningful trust in the workplace if there isn't a level of shared suffering that also ensues.
I have an example of that working for us. Like if you go to Sturgis and you're selling there, we have a semi truck we bring, and we're very, very busy, and you're there at 8 a.m. And a lot of times, they close down at 6 or 7 o'clock at night. But if we still have customers in there working on their bikes, we're going to stay until they're done. And there's many nights where they're till 11 o'clock, 11:30. And so, and it's 106 degrees, and then there's a horrific thunderstorm, and then it's 106 degrees and muggy. And then, you're there for all these hours, you're busy the whole time. We have mechanics that we hire that come along. And then at the end of the day, the sales people can all go back to the house and go eat and shower or whatever. And the mechanic's going to stay there and do that. The salespeople never leave. They never do that. They sit there and help out and just keep the customer off the mechanic's back while they're doing it. And so, like you said, because of that, rally people, even when we hire new rally people that have been in the rallies before, there's an understanding. They know what to expect. They know, and there's a brotherhood there just because of you have done this crazy thing and you've done it over and over again for the course of, because a lot of these people have done this for 10 years, you know, and
That's exactly it. That's
Yep.
exactly it.
Yeah. So we really, we try to nourish that as much as we can.
That's smart. It's
Mm-hmm.
brilliant. It's, I mean, that's the way, and acknowledging that, acknowledging the suck, and acknowledging their, you know, that they've gone through it, they understand it, and that you're putting them in that position because you know that they can handle it. All right. That kind of goes directly into the next one, which is autonomy. And so this is the idea of letting your people go, like let them operate on their own. And because this is trust in action, right? This is activated trust. So I'm saying you can go and do this, and you're not going to have somebody hovering over you. You know, like you're going to be able to operate with a sense of freedom. And that's okay, right? Like I want you to do this. When you afford somebody that trust, right? Then that builds that sense of belonging, that builds that sense of connection within the workplace. And then that is immediately counterbalanced by the next step, which is accountability.
Accountability. I was just going to say, me and Christian, you and me both had the same thought in our head. Yeah, but what about the guy that doesn't do it when you give him the freedom? You give him the long rope.
I've had a lot of bosses, and they seem to really have a hard on for micromanagement, regardless of how much better I was at my job than everybody else I worked with. I worked in medicine for a while, and it's in the civilian side. Medicine sucks because there's middle management that doesn't know what they're doing, and they tell you how to do your job every day. What are they going to do?
Those people they're doing that because that's how they maintain their position. That's how they justify their position, which may not be required. It's interesting when as a consultant and you go in to play when you go into places, the same thing that I was talking about with this, like there's nothing that I've said so far that is earth shattering. I've never heard of this before, right?
Right.
There's nothing that I go into an organization with and talk with the CEO or I talk with the employees that they don't already know. Like they know their business, they know their problems, they understand the struggles more than me. I'm just showing up. It's like day one. So I spend time, talk to the employees, talk to the executives, you know, do it separately, go actually spend time with the employees while they're working and get a feel for what it is that their struggles are. And it's really interesting because speaking from the inside, like an employee speaking from the inside and bringing up that exact problem, Christian, is you hear it and you're like, yeah, okay. Like the executives or the managers, okay, whatever. You know, it's like you'll be fine. You're gonna do what they say. This is the way that the system is. And so sometimes it takes a third party to go in there and say, hey, this is the problem. And it's literally not even changing the words between what the employees have been saying the problem is. It's just the perspective of where it's coming from. Like, I'm an expert and I'm coming in and I've worked with a ton of companies. And because of that, I have trust built up with you that, you know, I know what I'm doing and I can help you to attract and retain talent. And I've done that with these other organizations by doing this. And then I just tell them half the time you just tell them what the employees are like. They want, like, they're mad and this would make them happy. They're like, yeah, that's it. Like, that's it. All right, we can do that. Cool. Let's go. It's insane.
In the way the employees take that on too. So I know in the past and other jobs, I taught this to my son too. If you ever have a job that you like the job, but you're having problems in it, take it to the next level up and take the problem that you're having with a solution. Have a solution. Just don't go in there and complain and stuff. Go in there and say, this is the problem I see. You know, these parts are not being done right. And people are taking this when they should be checking it out and stuff like that. Here's a possible solution I see. I don't know if it'll work or not, but what do you think? And I told him, I said, when you approach it that way, as a boss, when someone comes up with a complaint, you don't want to hear it. I mean, you want to hear it, but you just know, what's this going to be? You know, in that when you have 3 employees or something, it's not a big deal because you're, like you said, everybody's doing everything. But after a while, it's like, well, you know, there's more to it than that. But when someone comes up and says, hey, you know, this is an issue and you know, here's X, Y, and Z ways that I think we can fix it. and you can look at them and go, well, we can't do X because of financial reasons, and we can't do Y because you can't ship to that country or something like that. But with the idea for Z, there's something we can work on. Would you be willing to work on this with us to get this taken care of? And their eyes light up. They're like, yeah, absolutely, I'll take that on. So yeah, that the accountability. One of the people I worked for, that was the guy's amazing. I mean, he invented the motorcycle aftermarket in 1968. And I asked him, I said, how did you build this over and over again, every company that you did? And he's like, I hire the best people I could find and I let them do their job. I'm like, really? He goes, yeah, it's really that simple.
Magic.
Yeah. So hire the best designers you can and let them design the best stuff. Hire the best salespeople, the best warehouse management, the best warehouse workers, the best rally team. It just went right down the line. I mean, it was like, well, boy, it sounds so simple, but it's exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, and there's a time and a place, like you can show up to an organization and start working there in sales or in whatever role. This is something that I learned in the military, is especially as I started progressing in the ranks and taking more senior positions and transitioning from unit to unit. It was show up and shut up for like 30 days, 60 days, and just take it in and just ask questions. Like, just go around and just like, okay, so all right, this is happening there. What's the process for this? What's the policy? Actually read the policy letters.
Sure.
And then you can build your, exactly like you said, like kind of like your list of shortcomings or inefficiencies, and say, this is where I see us to be lacking. Right. And it's what makes the military so clear, is that you're not, there's room for creativity, but there's also, it's just like, these are the metal tasks, right? This is the stuff we have to get done. Right? And we have to be proficient at these things. And so if we're not doing the stuff we need to do, if we're not training our leaders to train our soldiers to do these things, like, then what are we doing? Like,
so
what's actually happening?
Kind of like if you were going into a battle with a group of soldiers that were incredibly well organized, and the logistics of everything, getting the tanks and getting the people and getting the soldiers to the front line is there, but no one ever taught them how to shoot.
Yeah. I mean, it's like it's like trying to think of it like there's a part of it where it's like you go back to this sense of autonomy, like this autonomy can't be attained without a sense of proficiency, right?
Yeah.
You can't put a specialist in charge of detainees when they're downrange to go take them around.
No, they had they had the Wisconsin National Guard there taking care of the detainee security. That was not something that I could do.
But yeah, so it's well, I guess the one last thing I wanted to say about accountability was that often when I talk about accountability, it's almost from a slightly different perspective. Obviously, you want to do we call them IPRs, where you do these in progress reviews. Everyone's got their progress and what they're going. You say, this person's assigned to do this. Like, you needed to make, if it's a sales review, it's like, okay, everyone's making 25 calls a day. Let's see how many calls that you got to move to a discovery call. From those discovery calls, how many turned into, our next, however many steps you have, how many turned into, from those, how many turned into conversions, right? How many actually turned into sales? And then the more that you isolate that, the more that you understand that, the more that you can take action to, for corrective action, to do either additional training, to push them back to the script, whatever it is that is the problem that's identified. But with that's kind of like basic, right? Accountability 101. So the accountability that I like to add in on this portion that makes it a part of connected leadership is you're showing up and you're not necessarily there to troubleshoot, right? You're there, you're going to call out the stuff that needs to happen that isn't happening, but you're showing up on behalf of your team, not as the sword to cut through, but as overhead cover, right? So you're there like, what is stopping you from getting done what you need to get done? Like, tell me so that like, are you getting bombarded with other tasks? Are you wearing too many hats right now? Like, what is stopping you from accomplishing? Like, if I'm a project manager and this is our project, what is impeding you? Right? If there are problems, do you need more resources? Like, do we need another person? Do we need another computer? Like, what is it that we need? I can reach out to my network. My network is larger than your guys's, and I can leverage my position and my skill and my influence to support you, right? So accountability backed up with I have your back. I'm like, I want to see you be successful,
Right.
and not at the expense of your mental wellness. I want to see you be successful for this quarter and the next 17 quarters, And so when you put that in mind, then you start to take things from a different perspective. It's almost everything comes down to a perspective of like a time frame. Like, what time frame are we looking at? And we all get so short-sighted on
Right.
we have to hit our targets this quarter. We have to do this month. I'm like, yes, it's good. You have to have those goals and you have to have those things set, but it needs to be nestled into a much larger perspective that creates sustainability over time.
That makes sense. What,
And so,
what is that? How many more are there? Do you get?
Uno mas.
I've lost track. I've lost track. This has been awesome. Was it was that 4, 5?
Five.
So there's one more.
One more, and that's that actually ties back into the episode. The last episode I did was kind of a part 2 of a mini gratitude series that I did, but that's essentially it's effective praise, gratitude in action, gratitude as an action, and how to leverage gratitude in your own life in such a way that you can turn it into an action at work with your employees. And so, I mean, the simple, like, real basic idea here is that if you tell somebody that they're doing a good job, then they feel better and they want to stick around, right? But that's not really enough. That's that, like you were talking about in that episode. It's like that's that pat on the back. Hey, man, great job,
nice job.
Sure, proud of you.
Yeah, you're still gonna have to come in Saturday.
Yeah, exactly. But it's acknowledging, the kind of the rules of thumb is that it needs to be timely and it needs to be specific. Right. And so if I don't, Christian, I'm sure that you can relate to this. In the Army, we would have an award that is for an event that took place that gets given to a person, actually awarded to the person in front of the unit like 6 months, 7 months later. And
they were giving awards to people who had been shipped home. Here's an award for Bob. Bob shipped out 2 cycles ago, but we finally got the paperwork done. We like Bob. He was A1 soldier. And I have no idea who Bob was, where he was working. They talk about what he did later on, and I still can't figure out where he was in the facility because either that building's not there anymore or, hey, sorry. Sometimes, Matt, I run off at the mouth. So I hear what you're saying. Yes, I saw that many times.
Do you remember Chris Farley's bit that he did? He was sitting with like Paul McCartney or something like that, and Chris Farley had a bit. He was sitting next to him, and he was kind of fangirling. He was like, "Hey, remember that time that when you and John Lennon, Yoko, and you were there, and you did that song. That was really cool." And he's like, what are you talking about? It's that kind of thing in a company that you do see, so there is a time limit. That needs, otherwise it's meaningless. And that, I watched that whole video you had. So,
oh, great.
Matt's video is up on, it's Matthew Lostaglia, and it's resilient, or real resilience on YouTube. His YouTube page is awesome. He's got a whole bunch of great videos and shorts and stuff on there. You're also got a LinkedIn page. What's your LinkedIn?
I think it's Matthew-Lostaglia.
Yep.
I'm the only Lostaglia out there. So
yeah, it's pretty easy for you to find. It's easy to find.
Remember the G.
Yes.
Lostaglia.
There's a G in there
We'll
somewhere.
just go with Lostaglia.
I've been saying Lostaglia.
It's like nostalgia, but the G and L are flipped around, It's
Oh yeah, look at that. See, I'm dyslexic, so everything's flipped around to me anyway. That's why I always got to ask. So
Is that how your left hand doesn't know what your right hand is doing?
see, never.
Okay.
So anyway, so that gets us through the 6. I've got but I think we could do another whole show. Easily. We'll have to have you back, but let's talk a little bit about how you actually get the work then, and then I'll put links below to everything, all of your stuff, and we'll put this up on the Facebook group and the now defunct Nomad Network. But so how do people find you, or do you find them? How do you market what you're doing? Because you have a really niche thing. So that's really interesting to me, how you get this word out there. How do you find companies that are like, oh, you know what, we should talk to Matt about this?
So the number one way that I found this specific work was through speaking gigs. Like, so
Okay.
I would market myself as a speaker. I'd never spoken publicly outside of trainings that I've done. And I would do seminars in the military for the massive resilience training stuff of, rooms of, 500 people. I would do breakout rooms. So I was well skilled in facilitating these kinds of events. Like confidence on stage, non-issue because of the reps. And so I was like, well, let me because I had had the same question. I was like, this is I know that this works.
How do I get in front of people?
But how do I actually get it out to people to actually get them to use it? And so the number one way is to promote the idea actually in person through speaking gigs. And so I'd go there, like the Jeeps event. I had business owners, and ironically at the time, I just actually stopped, and I'm not actually taking clients now. I had just stopped taking clients as I was going into this final speaking tour. And so I had business owners lined up outside of, like, from the exterior of our speaking hall that were just there some of them were just to shake my hand and say, thank you. Like,
Oh, it's great.
this is powerful. And other ones were like, how do I get in touch with you? I want to do business. And I was like, well, you missed the boat. So sorry, I'm here and just teasing you, but that's why. So actually the Nomad Network and Jason Stapleton, like the singular person that kind of brought us all together. He took a strategy recently, and he's just stepped off of it, but I'm actually going into my version of his approach. And that is, I am going into a massive value give. All I'm doing for the next 12 to 18 months is just giving. Just give. Everything that I have, I'm giving out completely for free. And so that's the goal. And this isn't even to generate business. This is to generate, awareness and to build a sense of connection between and identification, kind of brand awareness between this idea of connected leadership and me. That, like, if you want connected leadership, this is the repository of information.
It's the brand you're building. This is all branding that you're doing right now.
Exactly right.
And I think that's good. It's something I hadn't thought about doing, but speaking tours, people think of speaking tours as TED Talks and these huge groups, but there's a lot of smaller groups, and I'm like, a light just went off because Christian and me, we ran a tea party group for a while. That was kind of funny. I won't go into the tea party group, but we could all speak in front of people. I mean, I never considered taking that to the next level, like doing little speaking engagements to rooms of 30, 40 people that have a company or whatever like that. I asked you this because as a marketing person, any entrepreneur has to market, and that's a way that's way outside most people's comfort level.
Yep.
I can talk for hours and hours. It's not a problem for me, and I'm not nervous in front of people. As soon as I get out there, nervous as hell right before I get out, but as soon as the mic turns on and I start talking, I'm good. But it's a really good way to show your expertise, because just being on a stage, in my political world and talking at political conventions and things like that, just watching the audience as you speak that you're up there. So even if they can't stand what you're saying and you're going against them, you're up there on this stage talking and they're not.
Yep.
So they're like, we got to figure out a way to beat this guy, or you know what, we're going to get on board with him. But either way, there's a hierarchy there.
And even
And
you're acknowledged, like
yeah,
your presence is acknowledged. And so even when if there's zero support, they're not gonna turn and join the party. You know, they're going to acknowledge you as opposition that needs to be addressed
right.
in there. So you're gonna be a go-to. They'll be swinging at you, you know, and that's actually a good thing. Like it's good if people are going after you and attacking your ideas, it's because you're making waves.
Right.
You know, like I love the expression I've heard Jason say is, you know, haters always swing up.
Yep.
You know, and
You never
so
swing down.
yeah, speaking is incredible. It's an incredible opportunity, and especially now is such an amazing time to get into it because of COVID.
Right.
Like we're all seeking to get back out there and get reconnected and to get energized by these events. It's like we thought we could substitute what we were doing with Zoom calls, with online meetings, you know, with
You
remote
can't.
work, and you can't.
You
You
can't.
can't like you can get stuff done and you can be highly effective in the workplace when you're doing remote work. You are always going to lose something, and you're going to lose that connection. That's actually kind of the next, like the 18-month outlook for me is to reconfigure this completely in for like remote teams. Right. So
Right.
because I
Right.
talk about remote in this here and there, but it's not the focal point. And so I'm like, okay, how do we bring connected leadership to, because that's not going away. Right. Connected the remote teams, if anything, it's going to continue to expand more and more as people spread across the country, as people look for work across the world, as AI becomes more prominent.
Yeah.
We're going to be connecting with people more remotely as the years go by. So how do we establish a sense of connection? And I'm hoping to be surprised, but there is no substitute for being in person and feeling that energy. And so if you can get up on stage and speak passionately and intelligently about something and just pick something you actually care about,
Right.
and then people are going to feel that energy, because the one thing about speaking is that no one, 2 months, 3 months, 2 hours after you speak, no one remembers what the hell you talked about.
No, they remember the story.
They remember the story. They remember the way you made them feel.
Right.
That is 100% the case. So if you can make people feel like, oh, I'm ready, like let's take action, you know, and maybe they'll remember that one thing. So if you can come up with that one call to action with that type of energy and enthusiasm, you got them. You're in.
We did that. So we sell globally, and we had a meeting with our Canadian distributor that was looking to come on with us, and we set up a Zoom call, and I said a couple things in the Zoom call: make sure that you look good, make sure that and make sure that you sound good. More important to sound good than look good. And because most people are doing it on their laptop in their office. So we had the Zoom call, and I said, we've got to do something in there, and not a gimmick necessarily, but something that brings a story that they'll tie to them and they'll tie to us. So we're in Wisconsin, and we were advertising, we were talking about our whole line. We've got 500 and some products. We got a lot of stuff on motorcycles. And one of the things we have is a cooler that sits on a Harley Davidson on a rack on the back. So at the end of the meeting, once we sat there, we had showed them our displays and stuff like that. And one of the guys was rolling that display out of the way. And then he opened up the cooler, and in the cooler, I reached in the cooler and I said, now to show solidarity between our two countries and doing business together, it's a common courtesy here in the Upper Midwest to share cheese curds. And so I had a bag of cheese curds and then a can of Labatt's Blue, because I knew the guy was, and the room full of people that didn't say a word the whole presentation all started laughing. You could hear them and stuff like that. And the jokes started going back and forth. And they're like, that was awesome. And I got emails about it the next day. We got orders. We've got people are like, oh, let's do this. And I told the other two that did the meeting with me are very, 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 very conservative, let's keep everything professional and stuff like that. I'm like, it's Canadians. Fuck that. These guys will love this. And they did. And at the end of the meeting, it worked out. And now they're going to remember our company, because not from a single product that we showed them, but like, he's the guy that pulled the beer and the cheese curds out.
Yep.
That's all I cared about, because they'll remember those are the guys that had a little fun with us.
Yep. Yeah, I had a buddy that's on the speaking circuit right now he's got it's like you said, it's not a gimmick, but it's a calling card almost. And he talks about, your emotional glass being over full.
Right.
And so he does a visual, like he has a glass, he has a picture of water, and he starts pouring it, and he lets it, it helps too when you break norms.
Yes.
Right. So when it starts spilling and going out onto the floor in this conference room, people are like, oh my gosh, like, is this okay? And of course he checked with the people before. He's like, we'll make sure to get it cleaned up. Like, it's just water. And so
Yeah.
but that alone, like that one, the idea itself is so powerful on its own. But it's one of those things that's like, intrinsically, like, yeah, no, I know if I keep pushing and spreading myself too wide, it's just not gonna work out well. But then you get the visual, and then you have this emotional reaction because you're violating norms. And so he's gotten calls back. They're like, hey, my mom was at a conference that you did up in this place, and I'm running this conference, and I remember there was this thing you did with a glass of water that was like really cool. And so I wanted, and that was it. Like, I don't remember at all what you were talking about, but this glass of water thing I heard was really awesome, and I would love to have you come and be our keynote speaker. Like, what?
Yeah.
Let's go.
Yeah, that's great. Well, that's actually a good place, I think, to wrap up this. I think we need to do this maybe quarterly with you. It'd be fun to follow your journey through this. And
Absolutely, I'd love to.
Christian and I don't really have a plan of like a schedule to do these necessarily, but I'd like to do, a couple a month at least. And it was great to have you on. And tell everybody where they can find you. Also, I'll put the links below, but go ahead and let them know it's Real Resilience on YouTube. Where else?
That's exactly. Yep. And then Matthew Lostaglia on LinkedIn. That's if you want to communicate directly with me and engage with. That's where I post like the articles and stuff that I'm finding, that I'm reading, and that I find interesting. It's where I engage with people the most, is there. If you want the content, that's where YouTube is. And those are really the two main places. So
cool. Well, I appreciate you being here, Christian. I'm glad you're here too, of course, because this would be not even happening if it wasn't for you. Do you have Christian does podcast and voiceover stuff, and that's why he's got the pipes is what he's got. He's got the pipes. Do you have anywhere you want to send people if they're interested in what you're doing?
No, I'm going to save all the stuff that I'm doing right now.
He's being mysterical.
Well, I don't really, the stuff that I do for work. I'll leave out here. We'll maybe get into it. All I'm just going to say again, last time I offered people, if you have podcast questions, podcast technical things, just send me an email. I'm happy to, hey, I've got this weird thing that's going on. Hey, what about this? What about that? I know, and just I don't know if anybody's noticed, I don't look all that great today because it's a long day today.
It was a long day.
But here's the thing. Part of what I'm doing with this is I'm trying to show, with all the stuff I've got going on here, you see between my fingers, this is the weird background that Zoom does. I'm going to show you a progression of my audio. I'm going to show you a progression of skill, just advance. So if there's a thing you have a question about, sorry, I'm rambling again. If there's a thing you have a question about, just send me an email, reekenterprises.com or gmail.com. Can't even talk anymore.
We'll put a link below to something that'll actually go somewhere. Absolutely.
I actually might hit you up on that, because I'm going to be putting together the most advanced studio that I've ever done here in the next week or two. And I know that I'm going to run into things like, why is this buzzing over here? I don't understand.
Well, and it's okay, Matt, if you want, you'll get you either have it or already or whatever. Just send me an email. Hey, or I'm trying to figure out what I should do about this expensive piece of equipment that everybody says I need. I will tell you if you need it or not.
Yep.
Well, listen, that microphone is a nice microphone. I will not give anybody grief about buying that microphone, because it's also the microphone everybody buys. This one's better at half the price.
And which mic is it?
It's the Rode NT1. And I also have a thing for Australians too. So
yeah, I use a lot of Rode mics. I think we can do that. That would be a great show to talk about too. We can get some people on a little panel. I'd get Drew Holmes on. He's got the podcasting store. He's really good at this. And
so anyway, if you have a question,
good place to buy it,
Matt, send me an email. I'm more than happy to talk too much and run off at the mouth about tech stuff.
I appreciate it.
Cool. Well, anyway, thanks, guys. I think this was episode 13 or 14. You know, when you do that many, you start to lose count. You know, because it's been 3 years I've been into this. So I mean, yeah, I'm a consummate professional at my scheduling. So anyway, Matt, Christian, thank you guys so much for being here, and we're gonna be doing more and more of these, and I hope that someone gets something out of it. If you do, like it and share it. You can go to my website, my art website's maddkstudio.com. We didn't really talk about that much, but that is the sponsor of the show. I sponsor my own show. That's how I shamelessly self-promote. So we got a bunch of merch on there now. We got t-shirts and things that we're working on, and a bunch of artwork, and go check it out. It's maddkstudio.com, or just any of the social media, MaddK Studio, and you'll find me. And join us at the Nomad Net Marketplace on Facebook. This is where we all get together, and you can see what people are putting together. We talk about kind of our processes like we did here, and then you can sell stuff on there too. So we're gonna hopefully keep that nice and healthy there. It's been going on for about 3 weeks, I guess. I've had it open. We've already got damn near 100 people in the group right now. So once this thing gets rocking, I think we'll have something great. So thanks, guys, again, and we'll catch you next time.
Thanks, Matt.
Thank you. Nice meeting you.